Welcome to a brand new episode and brand new year of IDTALK4ED Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. And if this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, I welcome you and I hope that today's episode is one that's going to have you coming back for more. And for my returning listeners and viewers of the podcast, as always, I welcome you back. And I hope that today's episode is one that you find informative, enlightening, and of course, insightful. So to kick off 2025 the right way, I would greatly appreciate it if folks would hit that red subscribe button on YouTube so you can get future notifications on new episodes. If you're listening from Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe there as well. And we always welcome monetary donations to help us continue to build this awesome platform. You could do that in 4 ways. The first way is through cash handle. PayPal using the URL paypal.me/KwameSM. And for my day ones who have been rocking with Identity Talk from the beginning, from the infancy, you can go to Patreon. We have a community there. Become a patron today so you can get behind the scenes footage of the podcast and some other amazing perks that the rest of the public's not able to have. So make sure you become a patron today. And to check out past and future episodes of the podcast, you can also go to our main website at IDTALK4EDucators.com. Now, for my book lovers, I have a book that's out and has been out since mid-November called Learn to Relearn, Supporting Identity in a Culturally Affirming Classroom. And the reception of the book has been amazing. I can't thank the people who have purchased copies enough for their support and for continuing to spread the word to their friends and colleagues about the book and how it's impacted them. Please keep that going because that's only going to increase the visibility of the book. And if you've already read the book and you love what you read, I would greatly appreciate if you could leave a 5-star review on Amazon. That will also help to increase the visibility of the book across multiple book media platforms. And if you've yet to get a copy of the book, it's everywhere. It's on Amazon, it's on Routledge. You can even go to our main website at learntorelearn.com. So once again, I thank you all for the support. So now let's get to the main event. Today's episode features a returning guest, and that's very rare. Anybody that's been on this podcast or has been watching it for a minute, you know that I don't really repeat my guests too often. So if you're coming on for a second time, you are very special. And this person is somebody who is amazing. I had a chance to interview her and her father, I want to say about 2 or 3 years ago, when they were sharing about their company, which was still in its infancy, but since then it is elevated to new heights. And she's just been doing amazing work and doing a phenomenal job of carrying the company and doing things on her own accord to really get her profile out there. So I'm so excited to have Evalaurene Jean-Charles come back on to just talk about her story, what she's been up to, and what we can expect from her this year and with her company, Black on Black Education. So let's bring Eva on for the conversation.
Hi, hey, everybody. Sis. Hey. Thank you. You had me cheesing over here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Happy New Year, first off.
Happy New Year. It's crazy. It's crazy. So all of this work started in 2020. All of these conversations, all of this community started back in 2020. And to think that it has been 5 years since then is like baffling.
Yeah, but I just have to say, I'm so proud of what you've been able to do on your own accord and being able to continue to balance being a classroom teacher and still run Black on Black education. And I'll shout out to Jamal because he still played a major role in that as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, to my brother. But yeah, y'all been doing it and still continuing to do it. So I know you all were on here before, so I'm gonna try not to repeat too many of the same questions. I want to just go ahead and just start with this question, which I think is necessary and appropriate to ask. Given all that you've experienced and your own evolution, how would you answer the question of who is Evalaurene Jean-Charles today?
Yeah, I'm really working on not answering it by all the things that I do, right? So starting with like who I am, I think I'm somebody who likes to have fun. I am committed to joy and having a good time and finding my way back to joy. I'm a fitness junkie. I cannot, like this time of year when all the new people are in the gym and people are complaining about it, I'm like, no, I want y'all to join the train. I want y'all to be here too. And so then that leads into the things that I do, right? So all that joy that I try to create and finding my way back to it. And the reason why I say that so often is because it is not my default. Joy, kindness, happiness, empathy, they are not my default, right? And I think that a lot of people are scared to say things like that or put that out there because you don't want to be seen as the mean person or you don't want people to think that but the reality is that my lived experience was not one that was easy. And so to get to joy and to get to happiness, it takes work for me. It takes the gym. It takes creating joyful communities. My first response most of the time is sarcastic, and some people would say kind of rude. And so I got to sit and be like, ooh, wait, hold on. How do I? Because I do love to connect and I do love community. And I'm grateful for all of my friends and family that just let me be myself and help me get closer and closer to the ideal version of it. So I am a whole lot of things. I'm a middle school teacher. I just started teaching middle school this year. I've historically been a high school teacher, and I think I actually found my niche. I am supposed to be in the middle school classroom. I am that interesting type of person that absolutely loves it. Teaching 6th grade history, first time teaching that at a new school. So like lots and lots of change. That has all been for the better, which is incredible. I'm a wife. I got married last year, which is so exciting. I'm a dog mom. And I run Black on Black Education. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Black on Black Education, which is all about supporting educators in using student voice and student-centered practices to enhance their overall school and classroom culture. And so the work that I do is supporting leaders, supporting teachers, and figuring out how they find their way back to joy in a system that is not built for that to be the case, and supporting them and making their lives easier by recognizing that the answer is already in the room. You're not going to find it on a webinar, in a book, like even this podcast. It's going to ignite and inspire a lot of things in you. Books are going to ignite and inspire a lot of things in you, but the answer is already in the room between you and the genius students that you have in front of you. Y'all can figure out how to solve problems in meaningful ways when you build rich and beautiful relationships with them. And I'm so excited for all the ways that I'm going to be able to do that work in 20.
And we'll get to that near the end. But
yeah,
I'm going to have to get into your business a little bit because you did mention that you tied the knot.
I did.
The last time we spoke, you were single, living your life, trying to figure out life and figure out who you were because you had just finished undergrad in college. So like you were still very young in this thing. Yeah. And I feel like, you a vet, but you still got a lot of years ahead of you because you've been doing so much since we last spoke. But tell me how marriage has helped to maybe not change your perspective, but maybe it shifted your perspective about the work that you do in and out of the class.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think my partner, we've been together for a really long time. So he has known all of the ebbs and flows of me and all of the good things and also the really hard things over the course of the last couple of years. So I was just getting out of undergrad, but very soon after I think we recorded the podcast, we met. And so we've been together for a really long time. And I think that being married requires you to, especially because me and my partner were long distance for a very long time, it requires you to consider someone else if you want the thing to work. And I think the exact same thing can be brought into the classroom, right? I have to consider the young people in front of me for more than what I'm seeing on face value in order for me to serve them well, and vice versa. Because I think oftentimes we talk about education as like teachers need to do this for the students and this for the students and this for the students. And them kids need to do something for me as well. Because if we're going to be in this classroom together, it's a community. This is our space. The learning is our responsibility, not just mine. And so there are ways that I need you to show up for me, right? I need to be able to come in the morning and say, listen, this morning was not it. I woke up late. I forgot my lunch. Like, I'm not set up for success today. And so you probably not going to get the happy-go-lucky joy jump around Mrs. Eva today. And I need y'all to show up for me anyway. And oftentimes I think teachers are taught that they have to, you walk in, you put that smile on, you show up for them, you da-da-da-da. And it's like, that's so necessary in some cases. But in my experience, students are understanding. I've had kids come up to me and be like, Miss, you a little off today. Like, are you okay? Do you need me to get you some water? Do you need to, like, and to have people in your life that are willing to show up for you in ways that are, when things get hard for you, is great. And it, just because you're a child doesn't mean that you can't do that. And you're learning those skills so that when you're older and it's their turn to get married and it's their turn to join a partnership, they can say, oh yeah, I learned how to interact and have a reciprocal relationship with somebody. And so, yeah, I think that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think about that. I think the longevity of the relationship that I've had, and being with the person that I'm with who like supports the ambition and who comes home and wants to just hang out and watch TV on the couch. And I'm like, listen, I got work to do, sir. Like, I'm building something. And have him be like, yeah, no, I get that. And let me help you and support you in any way that I can. Not everyone has that. And I'm grateful for it. And I try to, there's a lot of ways that he shows up that are very different than how I would. And I got to take a little bit of what he got. He takes a little bit of what I got, and we make it work.
But that's marriage. That's how it is. People don't understand that it is work. You have to pour into it each and every day. This year is going to mark my wife and I's 10-year wedding anniversary.
Wow, congratulations.
In August. But we've been together for almost 13 years. So when you mention sacrifice and when you mention the importance of grace, these are things that resonate with me, because those are the same qualities that I've had to instill within my relationship with my wife. But also when I was in the classroom as a teacher, shout out to middle school, by the way, those are the best. But yeah, so I see that you're growing, and you mentioned your students. One thing that I've noticed you do more often now is you're letting us go deeper into your world. So we're starting to see more of you in action with the kids, engaging with the kids. And it's not like that type of social media where, oh, we're just going to show you all the romanticized stuff. We're just going to show you the flashes and the nice curated bulletin boards and all that. Like, no, I'm going to show you the ugly as well and what that could look like. And I think we need more of that transparency in that space anyway. So tell me about how you've been able to grow in terms of being more vulnerable in that way, because I know that wasn't the case before.
Yeah. I mean, I think like before, right, when I had just gotten under undergrad, I had a very particular idea of what being a teacher meant. And oftentimes that is built off of the type of teachers that we had. So I have definitely had fantastic relationships with teachers growing up, right? I also had terrible relationships. And I know that we all have that experience. I think that for me in particular, though, I really knew that I wanted to live into the tradition of educators that understood their students well and could show up and be vulnerable and show parts of themselves, right? I read all the books. I read The Ratchetemic. I read the Surviving. I read the Paulo Freire. Like, I read the stuff and I put it all in, and there was still so much that I hadn't unpacked about what I experienced in school. I went to especially in high school, middle school, I went to a school where I was one of a handful of Black people in the school. That's a very particular experience for people. And I didn't recognize that when then I went into a school where everyone looked like me, there was like this almost culture shock for me as a person of color about the diversity of people of color, because I didn't experience that. And so I had to do a lot of excavating for me. I had to do a lot of reflection for me. It literally triggered me to create a guided journal for educators to really play around with, what am I experiencing? What has my experience as a student? How does that impact me in the classroom now? And I just realized that, like, what works, what the times that works was when I didn't try so hard. The times where students really showed up and like did the work and were engaged and were asking questions, like, is when I really just like stop trying to control the entire thing. And I've always been a person who's super vulnerable and like willing to share. And again, we can talk about childhood trauma and all the things. Like sometimes I overshared with things and like people are like, oh girl, how did we get here? Like, and I'm like, oh, we weren't doing that. Okay. Like I don't do small talk. I'm someone who like, I want to get in, I want to know you. I want to understand why you are the way you are. I want to get into your brain. Like that's just how I am naturally and how I've been naturally. But I always thought that had to be separate from the classroom. And now I recognize that it's literally my teaching superpower, my willingness to be like, oh, wait, yesterday you was wearing that. And then now today you wearing this. And like, it's giving something's going on. So like what, like, let's talk about it. Let's go do a little closed door conversation. Everybody else is doing their do now. And I need to check in with you because what's going on? My willingness to want to understand the why behind behaviors, the why behind a student doing a particular thing, a why behind a kid that's just like, you're in 6th grade. Like, how are you 2 through with school? Like, babe, like what's going on? And then you have like these conversations where you have kids that like have been told in 3rd grade they were never going to anything. So yeah, by the time they got to 6th grade, 3 years of hearing that, you're over it. And so I think that once I realized that what I had outside of the classroom, the reason why I have such great friends and great support system outside of the classroom, that I could bring all of that energy right back into it and that it was going to be a benefit to me as a teacher and a benefit to my students. I was like, yeah, I'm never going back. And then I found a word for it and I was like, oh, student voice, student-centered practices. That's what we call this thing. Cool. So let me go out there and spread the word about it because I get the feeling of being tired and frustrated and aggravated as an educator. We got 3 days. We're get right back in the classroom. Like we're trying to get comfortable again, get reacquainted. And there are a lot of educators out there that are depressed going back into the building. And I'm so grateful that I found a system that works for me, that's just not my experience anymore. And that I'm actually thoroughly enjoying what it feels like to be in the classroom and wanting so many more educators to do that as well.
The Identity Talk for Educators Live podcast is just one piece of the work that we do under Identity Talk Consulting, which we've had since 2019. And since then, we've had the privilege of working with 40 different schools, districts, and organizations across the globe. And we want to continue to add to that number in this new year. So if you are a school, if you're an educator or an organization that's looking to receive professional development and consulting services within any of our pillars, whether it's anti-bias, anti-racist practices, culturally responsive teaching, or identity-affirming education, we are the firm for you, and we love to learn more about your needs. When you have a chance, make sure you go to our website at identitytalk4educators.com to learn more about our services and to schedule a discovery call today. We love to hear from you. And you did mention the journal, which I see in the background. Yes. And we'll get to the journal, but you mentioned student voice. I do want to talk about that in a sec now, because given what just transpired with these past presidential elections in the States, there's a lot of fear about what's going to happen within our education system, rightfully so, from fellow educators and those who are involved with serving our children. And one of the things that we've seen post-pandemic has been book bans. We've seen certain curriculum that's identity affirming. In our case, Black identity affirming being censored legislatively. And we're talking about student voice. We do this work because of students. So my question for you is, given what's happening politically, why should folks continue to center student voice in our schools? Why is it still so important and relevant, especially in this day and age?
Oh man, I definitely caused a little discourse on the interwebs when I said that students are our customer. And it is an analogy, right? Kids aren't buying anything. I get it. But when we make a purchase as individuals, we are investing in something that we find value in. We want our children to do the exact same thing. We want them to invest in something that we find value in as educators. If you're a global history teacher, or maybe it's your content choice and maybe it's not. For me, it's not. Global is not like my love child and what I would love to teach, right? But I teach it, and I teach it well. And I have students that are like, oh, we learned about Athens today. Like, wait, miss, who did, like, excited about conversations that when I was in high school, I was half asleep while we were doing this, right? And it's because of the way that I teach. There are people who are afraid about what is going to happen. And I took my 32 seconds to be afraid as well. But after those 32 seconds were over, I realized this is no shade to the other political opponent, but we were still going to be fighting for student voice, whether she won or not.
I agree.
We were still going to be fighting for the systemic changes that we've been asking and pleading and begging for, whether she won or not.
Preach.
And so, not to say I put my vote in, so we don't come for me, right? I did what I needed to do. But the reality is that we are where we're at. And yes, the fight seems more damning right now because of the power and the drastic changes that are potentially going to be made due to this administration. The reality is that the fight was going to be the fight. And so instead of the fight feeling draining and never ending and something that we can't possibly overcome, we've possibly overcome a whole lot more than Donald Trump, my loves. A whole lot more. As a people, historically, we've overcome way more than him. So I'm not putting him on no daggone pedestal that he's the biggest fight that we've ever had to fight. That's one. Two, when I say student voice and I say student-centered practice and the importance of interacting and engaging with students in ways that humanize them, in ways that humanize us, I mean that we are recognizing that even with every single barrier that exists within the system, that we still have the capacity to talk to our kids, make what they're learning relevant to them, make suggestions on what they can and cannot do when they are not in our classroom. I never told them to go and watch such and such. I never said that. I actually said that there is a movie that talks about why. That's all I said. I didn't teach it. I didn't give no extra credit for it. I just happened to mention that there's a list of movies on this website called book bans or website bans or movie bans. I just happened to mention that exists. I don't know what you're talking about. And so there's a confidence that has to come with us as educators. We cannot sit in fear. There's already 400,000 teaching vacancies across this country. Do they want some more?
Yeah.
That's a lot. It's hard and it is difficult and it is scary and it is all the things. And we are much more powerful than all of that. So it's a concerted effort in our individual classrooms. I am the queen of a fight. If my school is going to do something I don't like they doing it, no, I want it to, I'm going to tell the whole reasons and the this, and I'm going to bring the studies in. I'm going to do the whole bit. Everybody doesn't need to be that. But if you believe that your young people are going to go out into the world and do incredible things, that they're already going out into the world and doing incredible things. If you believe that, if you're that educator, if you've always been that educator, students are running to your classroom to find you. Kids always want to be around you. They're always asking you questions. They are always trying to figure out how they can please you. And they're handing in their assignments, not because they really want to do it, because they don't want to disappoint you. If you're that teacher, then you can be that teacher regardless of what changes Donald Trump makes to the system. And the impact that you are going to have is so exponentially beyond what he said you can or cannot write or read about or talk about in your curriculum and your content, right? And so it's just, again, standing 10 toes down, foot on necks, doing what you know is right for the kids in front of you in ways that keep you safe. Right. So if you know that you can't teach the 1619 project the way the 1619, you can't get on that website and show it to the kids. OK, write it on a sticky note, put it in the book bag and read for later, watch for later. They can't even figure out how to make sure the kids got good school lunch. You think they're going to find your sticky note? Like, babe, there's just a level of confidence that we have to start to live into, that we know what we're doing. There's a difference between telling students what to think and telling them the options around what's out there and what's available. Some people believe this, some people believe that. You've got to come to a decision on your own. Here are resources that can help you do that. And there's nothing in the policy that says that you can't. And yes, there's going to be infighting in your school and there's going to be people who disagree with you and there's going to be fear and there's this and there's that. I also want to preface, and I'll close out on this, is that I teach in a very, very liberal city. I teach in New York City. So there's also a level of safety that I have and that I feel and the confidence I've been able to build because of that. But I also make it apparent to my kids when I taught the 1619 Project that there are children all across this country that cannot learn this in school. So the way I need y'all to show up when we're learning it is different. I need y'all to move different because there's a whole bunch of kids that are learning the direct opposite of this. And when it's time for you to go out into the world, you need to know how to use it, how to leverage it, and how to have fruitful conversations with people. Because the reality is that those of us who are going to be confident enough to do the work in our classrooms, we're just building the next coalition of people who are going to do exactly what we're doing for the people who didn't learn the thing, who were actively and willfully ignorant and remain to be so.
You ready? You're ready.
I've been ready. I've been ready.
I'm so glad you broke that down because one word that's been weaponized time and time again is this word indoctrination. And what we need to understand is the minute we're born into the society, we're indoctrinated into whiteness.
Yeah.
No, that is an indisputable fact. It's indisputable. And all the things that you mentioned, you're not saying you should read this. You're just saying, here, these are the different perspectives that are out there. You go explore for yourself, because in the end, if we're really about building student agency, we got to give them the space for them to come to their own conclusions and perspectives on things that we present. And there are multiple perspectives on single issues out there, especially this one that we're talking about. It's not for us to coerce students into thinking like this. It's like, no, here are the facts. Look at your own life experience. How's that connect with what's going on right now? The kids could tell you how they feel without you having to tell that for them.
So what was I supposed to do? Tell them to shut up? When kids start bringing up, oh, well, I heard that Donald Trump is going to do X, Y, and Z. Was I supposed to say shut up? Or was I supposed to open up Google and search it up and find a source and show them how I differentiate between this source and that source so that I can get the best information that's possible? Or I was supposed to tell them to be quiet and not ask questions about the world around them.
Yeah, that part. And then also the part about understanding your geographical context. So I taught in Massachusetts, you're in New York, two very liberal, quote unquote, progressive states in the country. In Massachusetts, there are no regulations where there's any censoring of any kind of culture responsive curriculum.
Yeah.
You don't have any stipulations or any statewide legislation that is anti-LGBTQIA plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of the few states still in the country that's like that.
Yeah.
But even so, there's pockets of resistance within the blue states as well. So let's not get it twisted.
Talk about it.
You know, we really need to lean on our stakeholders. And that's been a recurring theme I've been mentioning really since the last season. We got to talk to our parents. We got to get them more educated about what's going on. Because as much as people want to focus on what's happening federally with these executive orders and this Project 2025, the real power is within the states.
Absolutely.
The real power is every 2 years when we need y'all to vote for your mayor. We need y'all to vote for your city council members. We need y'all to vote for your Congress people and all these other elected officials within your state. They actually have more power than the people who are in the White House, believe it or not. But we have to develop our civics knowledge when it comes to this, because that is something that I believe is severely lacking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I taught civics for 3 years, and there were so many like, wait, the president doesn't sign off on food stamps? No, that's not how that works. And so there's just so many questions that kids have because they're experiencing the government. And the amount of students, even with this conversation about this particular election, there are so many students that are like, there's just so much misinformation out there, right? And we're expecting 10-year-olds to decipher it. Like, there's no other generation of children that have had this much information. Like, I vaguely remember the elections growing up. I vaguely remember I was in 5th grade when President Obama was in action the first time. And I remember, yes. And I remember like the excitement, and I remember I came in excited because my family was excited. Like, I didn't have any understanding of his policies or his this. I came in and I had a teacher come in, and she was like, "Not everyone is excited today." And I just remember being like, "Oh, well, I didn't know that, ma'am." Like, you know what I mean? And there's just so many things that that young people, I didn't have a phone that I could pick up and had 1,000 videos I could watch in a day on a top. Like, we just didn't have, I didn't have that. And I'm young, right? Like, so imagine the generational divide between educators that are older and the children now, and then them being like, well, why don't these kids? And when I was a kid, and you're like, I get that. But when you were a kid, you did not have access to this much competing information at the same time. Yes. You couldn't watch 1,000 pieces of content in a day and like be expected to decipher all of that and then go sit back down in class and like pick up a pencil. Like, things have to change because things are changing. And I'm not saying that you got to go become a TikTok teacher doing TikTok dances I do that because I think they're cute and fun. But you don't have to do that, right? You just have to be who you are. And if who you are recognizes that our young people just need people to love on them and care about how what we are teaching them connects to what they might eventually do in the future, and be willing to make mistakes and to ask questions and to learn new things. Like, you want kids to come into your classroom and learn new things every single day, but you want to do it the same way that you always did it. So you don't got to learn, and they got to learn, because the logic behind it doesn't make any sense. Sometimes we have to sit back with our guided journal and like really sit with, why am I trying to do the same thing that I've always done with a completely different subset of people?
You know what? One thing that can help these resistant teachers is the Teacher Action Board program that you have with Black on Black Ed. Because we have a lot of teachers who are resistant like that, but there are some teachers who are very much aligned with what we're talking about. They want to do the work. They're just not quite sure how to get started. Absolutely. Or they may be in a situation where they've already entrenched themselves in the work, but they need some extra support. Yeah. So I'd love to give you an opportunity to share about the Teacher Action Board program through Black on Black Ed, how it's grown, because this is not a new program.
No.
I'm sure there's been some new components that have been implemented over time. And then also let them know why they should sign up, because I think it's a phenomenal program.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I mean, I want to go back to the why first. In this conversation, we've talked so much about the very real need for there to be a shift in the way that we teach, in the way that we lead, in the way that we show up for our students. We've talked about the reality that we have an election coming up that like is scary and is all the things. We have a need for community. We have educators in a need for support. We have educators that know that they want to feel different in the classroom, but don't want to do anything else. And so feeling different doesn't mean leaving. Feeling different means, how am I going to handle my day-to-day life? And that is what this coaching program is all about. It is about supporting educators in whatever way they need to build the confidence to show up, even with what's happening and the changes that could be coming from this upcoming administration, for them to figure out new ways to say, hey, listen, I know, and I'm ready to stand on business as it relates to how I show up and show out for my students, but like something isn't clicking, and I can help you put that puzzle piece together, because I've had to do it for myself. And it took so long for me to get to a place where I can say, I genuinely feel joyful in the classroom. I genuinely am excited about the work that I get to and will be able to do in the future. And I know that if I remain committed in the work, and if I maintain my practices that I need to do the things, that I'm going to ultimately be able to see the fruits of my labor. And I want for teachers who join the Teacher Action Board to get it. So why is because this feeling that you have, it is not wrong to feel, but to stay in it, that is always going to have a negative impact on our students. And so if you can make an investment in yourself, that is it's up there with that Amazon order. It's up there with what we're spending every couple of months on Starbucks, Celsius, Red Bull to keep ourselves together. So making an investment in yourself that can make and leave you more energized, leaving the questions that you have in the back burner around whether I'm doing the right thing or not doing the right thing. Leave those to rest and get the support that you need from an educator that has actually made the shift and who is just abundantly grateful for the way that I have been able to show up in the classroom.
And then could you just share a little bit about the structure of the Teach Action Board program? What does that entail? Is it weekly or monthly meetups? How does the community engage within the program?
So back in the day, the Teacher Action Board was a space that was just kind of like, come free, come do the things, and we're going to teach you a topic. The recognition is that y'all have already learned the topics. Y'all have went to the webinars, you have read the books, you have done the things, and the application is the problem. And so that's the action part in the Teacher Action Board. How do we take the actionable steps to make the shift in our classroom? And so how are we going to be doing that? We're going to it's a 3-month program. So in 90 days, we are going to see this transformation. We're going to see the shift in our mindset, and you'll come on to a coaching call. So that coaching call will be a virtual space. You jump in and you ask any and all questions that you have about what's going on in your classroom. How do I address admin when they keep doing this? How do I address this student because this behavior is not da-da-da-da-da? How I want to be restorative. I want to support my students. I want to maintain these amazing relationships that I have built with them. But I am scared that if I knuck if you buck, I'm gonna lose that. And like, you don't, like, if you came in my classroom, these kids already know I give you and you better get your life. But there's love. The cut eyes is coming from a loving place, and it just takes a few shifts for you to get there. So 3 live calls where you get all the support that you need on a weekly basis. You're also going to receive a Telegram space. And so in that Telegram space, there is going to be once a week where I'm in there for 2 hours for you to ask me anything, and I will send you personalized feedback to those things. So every month you'll be on a live call where it might just be you. It might be a few other people who are part of the program. All depends on how many folks we have in the space at that time. But you come in and you get what you need from that space. And then once a week, most likely going to be Saturday or Sunday mornings, you'll come into the Telegram. You'll either type out, give me an audio message, send me a video, and I will send you a video audio message back with how I would handle it in my space. And then last but certainly not least, you also get the step-by-step guide on how I use student feedback to fix every single problem in my class. Students aren't handing in homework. Great. I'm going to identify 3 questions to ask them. I am going to give them that feedback. I'm going to look at what they say about why they're not completing the homework. I'm going to come back to them and say, okay, I noticed that many people said this, many people said that. How the heck are we going to fix this? Because y'all need to do your homework. And they're like, okay, if you give us the homework on Monday, we'll get it done by Friday rather than having the homework one day. Because some days, if you only give homework on Tuesday, I always have to go to church on. Cool. So if you can't do it on Tuesday, you could do it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, hand it in. I would never have done that on my own. I would never have figured that out on my own. I figured it out because I know the answers in the room, and I know I can always fix a problem in my classroom. I don't got to run to admin. They don't never be in my classroom. I don't got to run to the dean. They don't never be in my classroom. I love them down. Like my school, I love my school. And if I needed my admin support, I know that he would be there. But I've come from schools where I got nothing was left to the wolves. And so I know if you teachers out there are like, yes, they leaving me to the wolves. I know it could feel like, oh my God, why the heck should I have to make this investment in myself? Why should I have to spend my little bit of money to get this coaching and get the support when these people are supposed to, but they're not. So you don't want to sit in what you're feeling, and you don't want to sit, you love to teach, you love this work, you don't want to be on transition teacher TikTok looking for a new job. You don't want to work in the summer. Like, that. So if that's the case, then make the investment to say, oh, I can in 90 days say, this is where I'm at, and I can see the transition happening over the course of that time. It took me a couple years to figure it out, but I figured it out. And now I'm like, yes, break is over, and that is so sad, but then I get to see my little chickadees on Thursday, and I'm excited.
Hi, friends. It's me, Thaddeus, from Thaddeus Nature Notebook. Are you loving our journey into the wild and learning all about awesome animals? Then don't forget to subscribe. You can find Thaddeus Nature Notebook on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Just hit that subscribe button and never miss a new episode. And if you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and leave a comment about your favorite animal. Thanks for listening and exploring nature with me. Let's keep discovering together. Now back to my daddy's self.
So listen, what you're talking about right now is what we don't get taught in our teacher prep programs. I want to make that very clear. We get taught how to pass, in your case, how are we going to pass our New York State teacher exams? How are we going to get students to pass the Regents, right?
Yep.
In my case, how am I going to pass the MTEL?
Yep.
Or if you're in another state, how do I pass the praxis test to get my initial licensure?
Yep.
We're not being taught how to self-advocate for ourselves, because part of what you're talking about is self-advocating, right?
Absolutely.
Self-advocacy. How do I stand up for myself in environments that could be unhealthy for me and others? How can I advocate for my students in ways that my admin or others around me are not?
Yep.
And also, you're teaching teachers how to produce documentation that could be useful when it comes time for evaluations, observations, but also when you're doing that, your student, that parent's teacher conference, when that parent comes, you got documentation. In some cases, CYA documentation. If you in the trenches, you know exactly what that means. I'm not going to divulge that. You know exactly what I'm talking about with that, because that's what extends your lifeline. So all that to say, this program's a valuable resource. I wish I had it when I was in my early years of teaching. I probably wouldn't have gotten let go during that first year if I had something like this. So I appreciate you for even putting that together, because I know that's a lot of work and a lot of intellectual property, if I might add, too.
No, I mean, I think it really came from a place of, I know I survived my first couple years teaching. I survived it. I have students that are about to graduate, and y'all gonna see me on this interwebs. Some people say they don't cry on Beyonce's internet. Y'all gonna see me bawling when these babies graduate in a couple months. I don't teach them anymore. I don't teach at their school anymore. But when they won class president, I had a student tell me I was the first person that she reached out to. Not your mama. Like, the impact that we have on these kids is something that is it's unbelievable. It's inconceivable. And because so many of us maybe have one teacher like that we remember from our time, we think that it is so they had to jump through hoops. I had a third grade teacher who, like, she would come to like my church retreats and like my church events just because she knew life was life and she wanted to show up for me. I loved her for that. I'm not doing that for I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna come to your basketball game every once and again. I'm gonna come to like maybe the school concert so I could see you and some other kids, like make it a joint deal. But I have boundaries and I have things in my life that are important to me, and I have things that I have to really hold on to. But even with just the way that I interacted and engaged with my students in that space, I went to my last school a couple months ago, and like it's the middle of a basketball game, and there are people sprinting across the gym to be like, "Oh my God, you're here! I missed you. How have you been?" Like all these things. Those moments are only created by what you do, the relationships that you build. And it is so hard to maintain and build relationships when you are too exhausted, aggravated, angry, frustrated all day. It is so hard for you not to snap at that kid. And again, I'm talking to myself right now. It is so hard not to snap at that kid when you are going home and grading papers and doing this, and your admin is now dropping new kids in your classroom because you're the only one that can control them. And so you love the work, but you don't love it like this. It doesn't have to be like that. When you join, when you come and you be in the you're never going to want to leave. But I'm telling you, we got 90 days together, and you can join at any time. 90 days is the commitment. And I think that like for the educators that join, there's going to be a transformation in your mindset and the way that you think. You're going to feel so confident telling admin no. I do it all the time. Love you. No. You sure you don't want to do after school? No. Can during lunch, can we have an office? Because that's not going to have a net positive for my students, because then I'm going to be tired. And so because I want to make sure that my class after lunch gets the full attention of me, I can't do that if I'm doing this during lunch. Does that make sense? And 9 times out of 10, admin is not going to say, oh yeah, I actually want you to do terrible in your class, so do this other thing. You got to learn how to flip the script and say the things. And you're being honest, you're being truthful, but being able to make those shifts and say, yeah, but I'm not going to be able to do this if you want me to do that. I'm not going to be able to do this well if you want me to. And it took me taking little things from a bunch of people, from all the podcasts that I recorded, from being in community with people like you, to recognize that there is joy on the other side of this work. It just takes intentionality and sometimes an investment.
Yeah. And also, just to add to what you said, if you're in a unionized state, you can only work a certain number of hours. So if you have an administrator that's saying, hey, we need you to be a part of this after school program, you've already surpassed that, you can say no because it's in the bylaws. So this is where the unions come in. This is where grievances come in. I mean, hopefully we don't get to that point, but if it does warrant that, you know that you have something that you can fall on. But I see our time, and I want to circle back to you, right? Because it is identity. And the last time you were here, you did share a little bit about your late mother who passed.
Yeah.
It's been 4 years. I know that 4-year anniversary just passed last month, and you've had a lot of changes, and grieving happens differently for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, everybody grieves differently. So I'm wondering, given what you've gone through and how you've had time to process her passing, how do you continue to push forward and translate the hurt and the pain into something that's going to propel you to be great, even your current marriage and everything great that's going on with you?
Yeah. My mother never met my partner, let alone was able to be at the wedding, right? And I think that for me, the grief has been the positive things that happen in my life, not being able to share any of those things with her. And when she was alive, our relationship was very, very complicated, and it was very, very difficult. And like I said earlier in the podcast, I am a very vulnerable and open person, because the reality is that people hide all that they go through. And then other people feel alone. And so because I have the strength to share what I've been through, I hope that people hear it, they see it, and they know that there is there is, again, I keep saying it, but there's joy on the other side. And so I lost my mom very suddenly. I lost my mom to her addiction, to her substance abuse addiction, which is not a way that there are far too many people in this country who have lost someone to it. And the conversation is happening, but it's not on a level that connects to how often people are losing people and experiencing the loss of family members due to substance abuse. And so for me, I threw myself back into my work after my mom passed, because it was just the only thing that was lifting me up or supporting me. Like, the teacher action war was happening during that time. And we had our first meeting. I think I canceled the December meeting when she died. And then January we were back. And then we had the Black on Black Education conference in February. Like, it was like boom, 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 boom. And toward the end of that year, it was like, wait, stuff is coming up. This is hard. You are kind of pushing away these thoughts, these feelings, and these emotions. And I had to really lock back in with myself, with my therapist, with my exercise practice, with the way I was eating. And so I say all that to say that the trials and the tribulations, they inform all of the work that I do. I've had students lose family members to substance abuse. I've had students whose parents were actively in their addiction while they're coming to school. And so I want them to do this test. And this morning, mom was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a level of, I know that I had to come to school after cleaning my mom up from whatever was going on the night before and getting my siblings on the bus and still expecting myself to perform, show up, show out, raise my hand in class, be 10 and 2 and head forward and write the things and da-da-da. We have kids that are in active trauma, active in our classrooms. The only way that we learn that is through curiosity. The only way that we learn that is by looking at ourselves and saying, hey, oh my goodness, I experienced this when I was young, and this is the way it showed up for me. So at the end of the day, what I teach my kids almost any day from a content perspective, they can look up on ChatGPT and have that information in 10 seconds or less. What I care more about is them learning how to fight through adversity, for them learning how to do the difficult thing and get on the other side and feel pride and be able to celebrate themselves for what they did on the other side. If you failed first marking period and the next marking period, you got a 66, baby, we having a party. Because I know for me, it took a long time for me to celebrate anything that I did, because I got so used to growing up and being in active trauma and then going to school and getting praised for being able to put all of that in a box and then show up in school and be the perfect student and listen and do everything that my teachers wanted me to do, and go home right back into that active trauma and do it again and again and again. And the 1 or 2 times throughout my entire school experience where I lost it, what the heck is wrong with her? Not knowing that this is what I was experiencing, not knowing that this is what was going on in the background. And so those moments where you can't fail, you can't make a mistake, you can't do anything wrong. And the school system reinforces that every single day for kids, just by way of how it exists. When we transform our classrooms into student-centered spaces where we use their voices and we care about them before we care about the content, that's not lowering the rigor. That's preparing your students to be fully functioning human beings that don't, I mean, everybody needs therapy, but that don't need intensive two times a week therapy for the rest of their life. That's right. And as teachers, we have the capacity to not fix it all, because that's not my ministry either. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a this, and I'm not going to pretend to be one. I will ask for help when I need it. But unfortunately, so many of our babies are struggling, and we want them to show up business as usual in our classrooms, and we want to ignore that part of them, and we can't.
And here's what I'll say about this that will pretty much tie the knot to this conversation. I've applied to many jobs, and I've never had an employer ask me what my SAT score was from high school.
Talk about it.
I've never had an employer ask me, maybe in your case, what was your Regent score when you were in 10th or 11th grade? How did you score? They don't care about that. What they care about is your competencies. Do you have the competencies to perform the job that you have applied for? And that transcends letter grades and all the transcripts and all the other stuff. So if we want to really talk about real education, this is what you're mentioning right here. How do we not even survive? How do we thrive?
Absolutely.
In a society that does everything in its power to keep us down? That's what it should come down to. Whew, Eva. Oh, we need another hour, and I know we don't have another hour. So guess what we're gonna do?
I'll come back anytime.
We're gonna wrap it up here, and I want to let you get off with this.
Yeah.
How do you stay true to the teacher in you?
I allow my students to remind me of who I am when I forgot. I allow my students to remind me who I am when I forgot. So in the beginning of the school year, I tell my students, whenever I say my classroom or my da-da-da, y'all got to remind me our. And sometimes they've done it in moments that I'm like, I want to fight you now. But they did exactly what they were expected to do. They called me in to be who I said that I was. And so I think that that's the thing. I give my students permission to be like, Miss, you're doing too much. And learning how to say that respectfully, and learning how to say that honestly, and learning how to say that vulnerably. But our students are telling us something with their behavior all of the time, whether we want to hear it or not. And so when we learn to listen, when we learn to interact, we learn to engage, our life gets 10 times easier because we're not guessing what they need. They're telling us. And we get to get back to the version of ourselves that we like a whole lot more than the one that's angry. And yet, like, we don't like that version of ourselves, but we show up as it because we think it's the only way that we can keep our classroom together. And it's not. And And so I think that's how I stay true to the teacher in me. I allow my peers and my students to remind me, like, girl, please get it together. And sometimes it takes me longer than I'd like, but I get there because I know that that's the version of my teacher self that I want to be.
Awesome. And then, of course, how can people connect with you on social media? How can they get connected with Black on Black Ed? And feel free to share a little bit about Black on Black Ed for those who didn't have the privilege of watching the first episode.
Yes. Like I said at the start of the episode, Black on Black Education is all about supporting, coaching, mentoring teachers and leaders on how to use student voice and student-centered practices to transform their classroom culture so that they can be joyful in their classrooms again, because we need that. And so there's a few ways that I do that. One, if you just want a one and done, trying to get quick and want to really just start the process for yourself, you can grab a guided journal on Amazon. It's called I'm Just a Teacher, What Can I Do? There's also a kid version. So if your school is ready to make the investment, you can order a bulk of them, and you can order it both for the students and for the teachers, and use them in an advisory, in an English class, any space where you really want to start and spark fruitful conversation with your young people. That mid-ticket area, if you know that you want that more personalized support, the Teacher Action Board is always available for you. You pop in, you join, you get monthly coaching, you get weekly support, personalized support for 2 hours during office hours on Telegram, and you get access to the system that I use to fix any problem in my classroom using student feedback. Then I have the Student Action Board, which is an elective course curriculum. If your school's like, listen, we need to do this in the whole thing, we need to overhaul this whole thing, we need a cute little makeover, then you can get this elective curriculum. You can have it standalone or with professional development attached. And that standalone curriculum, you get access to it. It's an elective course. There are 28 lessons that support you in figuring out what is going on in your school while empowering your students with research, confidence, leadership skills, and self-advocacy skills. Because listen, our babies need that for the future. And you need to stop guessing and doing all the things that you're seeing online and all the things that other leaders are doing, and just figure out exactly what the students need you to do, and then do that.
There it is, y'all. So tap into Black on Black Education. And that's going to be a wrap for us. On behalf of Eva, I'm wishing you all a good morning, good afternoon, and a good night wherever you are in the world. And yes, we are in 2025, y'all.
2025, people. This is the year. This is the year.
Yes, it is the year. And we are going to do this again another time.
Absolutely. Bye,
Peace
y'all.
out, everybody.
Thank you.